It's that time of year. It's the Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special. Our hosts decide for all 32 teams who their next cornerstone player will be. Who will reach? Who will fall? Find out now.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the 2026 Locked On NFL Mock Draft. I am Brian Peacock, host of Locked On's NFL Six Pack, joined by my six-pack co-host, Matt Williamson, and the hosts of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, Keith Sanchez and Damian Parson. Over the course of this special, something nobody else could bring you. We will reveal 32 first-round picks and the first selection of any team left out of the opening round from our hosts, get insights from our local hosts, and provide unmatched analysis on the selections. This isn't your typical mock draft. No fluff. No agent-driven favors, and no editorial control. Just 40-plus experts making the pick for their team they cover every single day. That means real insight into team needs, front office tendencies, and the names they're actually hearing behind the scenes. So let's get started. Locked On NFL Mock Draft 2026, fellas. I am pumped for this one. Another year. We made it. We're almost there. It's the Locked On NFL Mock Draft. Guys, I got to ask you, Damian, Keith, you guys talk draft every single day, not even when it's draft season. And so what's the big theme with this draft? What are you guys looking at before we jump into this 2026 mock draft?
I'll go first. I'll jump in. I'm looking for fireworks because I think outside of the number one overall pick, right, with Fernando Mendoza being linked to the Las Vegas Raiders, I think it's been all over the place, right? If you ask 10 NFL draft analysts, you're potentially going to get 10 different answers on pick, potentially number 2, right? Like they can go so many different ways and it just falls down the board in the domino effect. So I think we're in for a wild ride, in which I'm excited for.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of that. I'm looking to see where these top prospects land, right? This class is a good class. It's not a great class with a lot of high-end or an abundance of blue-chip players. But the guys that you view close to being blue-chip, the Jeremiah Loves, the Arvell Reeses, Sonny Styles, those high-end athletes, want to see where those guys fall because there's no actual consensus or dominant landing spot where you just pigeonhole and point. That's where this guy is going.
Matt, you've been doing this a long time. Can you remember a draft that could go off the rails as early as the 2026 class?
No, I think it's a very unique class from that perspective. And a lot of it is just there's not premier wide receivers, offensive tackles, maybe only one quarterback, and we know where he's going already. So I don't think it's a particularly strong draft. And I do think a theme is people want to get involved in next year's draft, you know? Mm-hmm.
Well, we've got one quarterback going in this mock draft. We know who that's going to be. So let's get right into it. Let's get into these picks and take a look at the top 5 selections of the 2026 Locked On NFL Mock Draft. And it starts with no surprises. Fernando Mendoza going number 1 overall to the Las Vegas Raiders, getting their quarterback of the future. We'll find out if and when a second quarterback sneaks into round 1 of this draft. And I know there's a lot of trade possibilities here in this mock draft as well, which is going to add to those fireworks you're looking for, guys. Pick number 2, the New York Jets going with an edge rusher. And it is David Bailey from Texas Tech and not Ohio State's Arvell Reese. The Arizona Cardinals at pick number 3, Francis Mauigoa, offensive tackle out of Miami. Then Arvell Reese goes number 4, adding an edge presence, assuming he does play more edge than off-ball backer for Robert Saleh's defense with the Tennessee Titans at pick number 4. And then rounding out the top 5, the New York Giants selecting Sonny Styles, Ohio State linebacker. Guys, is there any doubt about Fernando Mendoza? Is it too much of a reach to say that maybe he wouldn't be a number 1 pick in drafts of the past? Is it just here's the best quarterback, he's got to go number 1 overall, or is this a guy that should be going to the top of most drafts anyway because of his talent at the quarterback position?
Yeah, I want to focus on this part. Maybe he wouldn't be the number 1 quarterback in drafts of past, right, with the Caleb Williams and the Drake May and Jane Daniel in that draft. But I think he's talented enough to go number 1 overall. But I want to focus on what the Raiders did, right, by going sign Kirk Cousins. I think you see Tom Brady sitting in the building. And to me, without him saying it, he's telling everybody how important a guy like Drew Bledsoe was to his development, right? Go get a veteran, have him teach you the ropes, right? And even if Fernando Mendoza is not a blue chip prospect. If we believe that he's a really good quarterback, then Kirk Cousins can help him as a veteran get to that point. So I like the fact that they surrounded him with a veteran quarterback who's been in a lot of different places, a lot of different systems, to kind of teach him the ropes, to really give him the opportunity to develop as a young quarterback and give themselves, the Raiders, the opportunity to have a future franchise quarterback.
Yeah, and they're already learning the offense too. So there was never a surprise and never a doubt here that Fernando Mendoza is going to go number 1 overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. And guys, kind of the first surprise here, and is kind of what we talked about with the draft, that we really don't know how things could go, and it could get really wild here. It's been all Arvell Reese, the number 2 pick, and he's been mocked there by just about everybody. But when it came to John Butchko, here is John making the selection for the New York Jets at pick number 2 of not Arvell Reese, but Texas Tech's David Bailey. Then I want to get your thoughts, guys.
With the second pick in the draft, the New York Jets select David Bailey, edge rusher out of Texas Tech. In an ideal world, the Jets would find a long-term solution at the quarterback position with this pick. But since Fernando Mendoza went number 1 overall to the Raiders, there's no quarterback you could justify picking in the top 5. So the Jets turn their attention to the second most important spot on the field. That's edge rusher. This pick comes down to David Bailey versus Arvell Reese. Reese is a great prospect out of Ohio State. If he hits, he could be an all-pro, but he is a boom or bust prospect. He does not have a lot of experience playing the edge. He is a big projection. And this is a Jets roster right now without a lot of talent. The Jets need to hit on this pick. Bailey is safer. He has a longer track record as a top-notch pass rusher in college football. In fact, he was arguably the top pass rusher in the NCAA in 2025. So with the second pick in the draft, the Jets go with David Bailey out of Texas Tech to improve their pass rush.
Appreciate John Butchko checking in from his penthouse apartment in New York City there with the skyline behind him there. Matt, I talk to you about the draft and about these prospects every single day. So I know you're more of an Arvell Reese guy over a David Bailey guy, but I understand the idea of, if you're going to draft a pass rusher, draft a guy that you've seen rush the passer more, and that would be David Bailey here for the Jets.
I understand that, and I don't think it's a massive fireable offense or anything of that nature, but I would have been all over Reese at 2, and then Cardinals, I think at 3, should have ran to the podium for Reese, to be honest with you. So that shocks me, just because the state of both franchises, particularly the Jets that have so much capital going forward, I'm swinging for the fences for potential like defensive player of the year type guys. And I think Reese could potentially hit that, especially considering his age. I mean, he's a puppy.
Right. And so for the Tennessee Titans to have an opportunity to draft Arvell Reese at 4, that means not only the Jets, but the Cardinals have to pass on Reese as well. And I wonder if the idea of past tweeners was part of the equation for the Arizona Cardinals to go with the offensive tackle, which is a position of need for them rather than drafting someone like Arvell Reese. Should something like that, do you think it does, guys? Damian or Keith, you guys cover the draft every single day. Do you think that's something that should enter the minds of GMs because of past mistakes? And do you think that that the fans should be worried about a tweener, since they've missed so many times, the Arizona Cardinals have, with the tweenery type of prospects on the defensive side of the ball?
I don't think so. I think it's a case-by-case situation, of course. Like, yes, you look at Isaiah Simmons, who played every position possible on Clemson's defense. He had no real position. Arvell Reese, for a fact that he's a linebacker who can also rush the passer. He's a high-end athlete. He's instinctive. He's physical. He's powerful. And you see him working on his craft this entire offseason as a pass rusher, to where you already know that there's a baseline and there's a framework of what he can be. The floor is kind of already set, where some of the other guys, remember they drafted Zaven Collins, who's still on the roster right now. He was an off-ball linebacker. They moved him to that kind of Sam stand-up edge role later on in his career. So they have to just kind of take it case by case. And if I was the Cardinals, I'm absolutely taking Arvell Reese. Yes, CeCe Maui Noah, great tackle, really like him. Guy that can play guard and tackle. But they don't have a long-term option, in my opinion, at the edge rush position. They've missed on BJ Ojulari, Darius Robinson, who came in as a defensive end / 2-eye 3-tech. A guy like Arvell Reese would absolutely help this defense, both at off-ball backer and walking down third downs.
Guys, we've got the first of many trades in this mock draft. I love seeing the hosts come together, work out deals, and it will not be the Cleveland Browns selecting at number 6 in the Locked On NFL mock draft special. No, it will be the Dallas Cowboys that have moved up from pick number 12 to pick number 6. So let's let Landon McCool tell us about the trade details and who the Cowboys are now going to select on the clock at pick number 6 in this mock draft.
I'm Landon McCool with the Locked On Cowboys podcast, and the Dallas Cowboys have traded the 12th, the 20th, and a 2027 second-round pick to the Cleveland Browns for their 6th overall and 39th overall picks. And with the 6th overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, the Dallas Cowboys select Caleb Downs, defensive back, Ohio State University. And the Cowboys really felt like they needed to secure one of the last blue chip defenders in this draft. And they felt like they had a need specifically at the nickel safety position, which is going to be a key spot in the Christian Parker defense. So the Cowboys felt like they needed to do what this I'm referring to as this elevator trade, where they use one of their first round picks to trade up and one of their first round picks to trade back. And they use the difference to pay for this trade. They went up, they got their guy, and someone who could be a leader for this new defense for years to come.
Woo, wow. Okay. There's a lot to break down here with this massive trade for the Cowboys moving up and down the elevator pitch. I like that from Landon McCool and the Dallas Cowboys as part of the equation here. So the Dallas Cowboys traded away pick 12, pick 20, and next year's second to get Cleveland's pick at number 6, and also a second round pick this year in pick number 39. So that is the trade. And Caleb Downs, the safety out of Ohio State, 3 Ohio State defenders in a row, by the way, in this mock draft now, going number 6 to the Dallas Cowboys. Guys, is Caleb Downs that level of blue chip as laid out there? Because I like the idea of going up to get a blue chip player, but this is a safety. This isn't a pass rusher. This isn't a quarterback. To go up and get a blue chip player that clearly the Dallas Cowboys were wanting to move up and grab in this draft, and it's Caleb Downs pick.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have made this trade.
Hesitancy. I can tell on the looks of your faces, guys.
Yeah. I mean, 12, 20, and a 2027 second. That's a lot of capital. I know they got the 6 and 39. Love Caleb Downs. I think if this was a class that the safety class wasn't a deep position with more talent and size and athleticism and things of that nature, maybe. But you still need, Dallas needed a corner. Dallas needed other edge rush. I know they brought in Rashawn Gary via the trade. You still need help on the defensive line in the front 7. Yeah, I'm just not trading with that second first round pick is where it got me. I'm like, you trade 12 and maybe a second. All right, cool. Or a third, I'm fine with that. But moving both your first to go up there, if you went up there and got Sonny Styles or Arvell Reese, I'm fine with that maybe, but it's a little too rich for me.
A little too rich for me as well. I do get the idea of that's the last of the blue chip defenders. We need a face of the defense, winning culture, all that good stuff. I just thought it was a little pricey, and it was a kind of a no-brainer for the Browns. I mean, if you look at the Browns' history since making the Watson trade, they just haven't made very many picks until last year. They need to make all the picks they can get.
100%. Matt, to your point, you got EMW. Could have gotten it 20. Dylan Thineman is also out of Oregon. That's in the first round. Mm-hmm. You could have waited till round 2. Got like AJ Halsey and there's some other safeties in this class.
Good safety draft.
It's a good safety class that you could have gotten and brought an impact guy to your secondary without trading all the way up into the top 7.
I think some of these future NFL safety nickel defenders are going to have to send a portion of their paycheck to Nick Emanwari because all of a sudden we're drafting these guys at pick 6 instead of, in the second round. So that's fascinating as well. And the value of that position only going up in the NFL. There's no low value positions anymore in the NFL. By the way, there's a running back that's still out there. Can we see another quarterback in this draft? So let's continue on the rest of the top 10 after a blockbuster trade by the Dallas Cowboys to go up. And now 3 first round picks for the Cleveland Browns as well in the rest of this thing, unless they're not done trading. Pick number 7, the Washington Commanders select not the running back in Jeremiah Love. They go wide receiver. the fourth Ohio State player in a row, this time on the offensive side of the ball. Carnell Tate from Ohio State, the wide receiver, going 7 to the Washington Commanders. The New Orleans Saints select Ruben Bain out of Miami. And then the Kansas City Chiefs come back with number 9 and Mansour Delane, the cornerback out of LSU. And finishing up the top 10, this is where Jeremiah Love comes off the board. The Bengals, with all the needs on the defensive side of the ball, that's not the way this board fell. And there's actually teams trading up to get those defenders. And that means that the best player available for the Bengals at 10 ends up being a running back to go with all of the power they have on the offensive side of the ball already. And it's Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame running back, going 10 to the Cincinnati Bengals. I know, Damian, off the air, we talked a lot about Love, and I know you are high on him as a prospect. Is it worth it going the running back direction here for the Bengals, even with so many needs on the defensive side of the ball, or would that be forcing it if they went defense and let Love go any further down the board?
I mean, do they need Jeremiah Love? No, they don't. They definitely need defense. They could have drafted the Jamal McCoy, add another corner to that cornerback room. Both of their starting corners are due contracts, and DJ Turner and Dax Hill. So you could have added, and not saying don't pay those guys, but you could have brought a Jamal McCoy in as well and used Dax Hill as a versatile piece. Could have got Dylan Thineman. You could have went defense if you wanted. But a big board over at Locked On NFL Draft, Jeremiah Love is our number 2 prospect in this class. So it's like, I get it, getting a blue chip player, but they got Chase Brown. They didn't need a running back in this situation.
Keith, what about the Tate versus Love conversation that must have happened in the Locked On Commanders draft room?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's a good selection, and I look at it from this perspective, right? If you look at the Washington Commanders receiver room, right, outside of Terry McLaurin, there's a fall off, right? You have McCaffrey there, and then you have a couple other pieces, but I center it all back to Jaden Daniels. And with Jaden Daniels, you don't want to take his development for granted, meaning that you want to put more pieces around him to make sure that their rookie year wasn't just a flash in the pan, right? And the wide receiver room, you clearly need more help. So I like getting Carnell Tate, for the Washington Commanders. And also I sit there and I say 4 Ohio State Buckeyes in a row. How did they not win a national championship, right?
Is that guy who went number 1 overall.
Right.
I had the quarterback, and Indiana did. I don't think we're done hearing about Indiana first-round prospects as well in this mock draft. That is the top 10. Coming up next, pick number 11, the Miami Dolphins. What do they do for a new regime in Miami? And the first of 3 first-round picks for the Cleveland Browns in the 2026 Locked On NFL mock draft special coming up. The NFL mock draft special is brought to you by Rocket Money. If you've ever opened your bank account and thought, where did all the money go? You're not alone. Keeping track of subscriptions, spending, and bills can get overwhelming fast. That's where Rocket Money comes in, helping you take control of your finances all in one place. It tracks all your subscriptions in one spot and can help cancel the ones you don't need with just a few taps. It automatically categorizes your spending so you can actually see where your money is going, and you can set budgets, get alerts, and stay on top of upcoming bills. It just makes everything feel more organized and gives you a clearer picture of your finances day to day. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Okay, guys, we are on to pick number 11 in the 2026 Locked On NFL mock draft, and it is the Miami Dolphins, and they are going with a big man up front in Venga Ioane, the guard out of Penn State, and that brings us to the Cleveland Browns, the first of 3 first-round picks, and I really like this for the Cleveland Browns. Monroe Freeling, offensive tackle out of Georgia, someone they might have considered taking at pick number 6. The Los Angeles Rams at pick number 13, Mekhi Lemon, wide receiver out of USC. Baltimore Ravens going to the offensive line with Utah's Spencer Fano, whether he's a right tackle, a guard, a center in the NFL. I'm not sure, but a really good player and worthy of a mid-first round selection. And pick number 15, we have another trade, guys. and it is the Minnesota Vikings coming up from 18 to draft Tennessee cornerback Jermod McCoy. It looks like Tampa is going to receive pick 18 and 97 from Minnesota to come up to pick number 15. And it looks like a 5th round pick is also going back to Minnesota. So Tampa Bay gets 18 and 97, and the Vikings get pick 15 and 155. That pick number 15 becomes a cornerback, Tennessee's Jermod McCoy. I want to go back to the Miami Dolphins real quick here, Matt, because I like the way Kyle Krabs, host of Locked On Dolphins, put his brain trust cap on. And I really think this is the way that the Dolphins are going to do things. And you want to say, maybe they go wide receiver. They have that big need. Maybe it could be Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end, right? But if we know anything about John Eric Sullivan and the way he's going to do things based on the way that things were done previously in Green Bay, I expect a couple of big people drafted here by the Miami Dolphins, and that's what they did with pick number 11 in round 1.
Yeah, I join Wig every Friday on Locked On NFL, and we've had this running joke that, for years, Miami's had too many Ferraris and not enough dump trucks. And I think that they've found the error in their ways with this new staff. And I commend Kyle for give me a big time dump truck here, even though our pass catchers are a mess. We'll fill those in later.
Keith, what stood out to you in these selection of picks? Was it the big trade? Was it the Browns going back and getting their left tackle of the future in Monroe Freeling?
Yeah, I'm gonna go this. Well, I'll speak on 2 real quick. I love the Cleveland Browns, right? Because what they were going to get at number 6, they were able to trade down, get an extra 1st round pick, and then still address the left tackle, right? And they still have 2 more 1st round picks. So right now, at this current moment, they're winning, right? When we talk about the trade with the Dallas Cowboys, they're winning because they still got their guy. But the pick right after that, the Los Angeles Rams going with Mekhi Lemming, I thought was very interesting, right? I believe at the coaches and owners meetings, right, there was a lot of conversation with McVay or the reporters asking him about the potential trade option with Devontae Adams, right? And then right after that, we get the Puka Nacua news. So I think them drafting Mekhi Lemming, I think it put the GM Les Snead in position to where you almost had to draft him because that's both of your star wide receivers, right, with some type of, I guess the best way to put it is concern overall. And I think if you're being all in with Matthew Stafford, just a year older, right, but potentially in his prime, maybe a year or 2 left, you want to make sure that you're not void of talent. And then this is also a team that's been aggressive on the defense side of the football, go and get Trent McDuffie. So you know that they're in win now mode. So I think that might be the surprise pick. But when you look at everything going on with the Los Angeles Rams right now, it makes sense for them to go be aggressive and get a pass catcher.
I want to hear from Spencer Graham, the host of Locked On Browns, making the selection and the thought process of the trade down ending in Monroe Freeling with pick number 12.
There's a general consensus that with 2 first-round picks this year, the Browns will use those selections to address their 2 biggest needs on the offensive side of the ball at tackle and wide receiver. And while I tend to agree, I couldn't pass up an opportunity when the Cowboys come calling. They want Caleb Downs to move back from 6 to 12 to then make my first pick and add a first-round pick in the process this year, plus a second-rounder next year, just in case I need to add a quarterback or go after a quarterback in that 2027 class. I pulled the trigger on the trade, moved back to 12, and when the Browns are on the clock again, this is where they do address one of those needs. Monroe Freeling, tackle out of Georgia. Yes, still some rawness to his game, still some things to work on from a footwork standpoint. Hopefully, George Warhop is the guy to improve his game at the next level. A lot of tackles, though, enter the NFL still raw and incomplete in terms of their ability to start immediately. And that might be the case with Monroe Freeling, but the potential is there, the traits are there, and the value at this stage of the draft is there rather than at 6 to take Monroe Freeling, invest in the future of the offensive line, and have a group, by the way, that the Browns have prioritized trying to get right this offseason. They finish it off by getting their left tackle of the future. And with 2 more picks to come in this first round, they can get wide receiver a little bit later.
So that was the first trade. Damian, talk to me about the second trade here. And has Jermod McCoy done enough pre-draft to make teams feel okay about his ACL injury, which cost him all of his 2025 season, and not only being comfortable with drafting a player in the mid-first round, but actually move up for a guy?
I think so, right? You look at his pro day, he read sub 4.4. He jumped high and everything, but he looked good on the field in the workouts. And you go back to that 2024 tape. If he played that way in 2025, he's CB1 over Mansour Delane. You get a guy with ball skills, instincts, guy that can play press man, play off coverage, hinge routes, things of that nature. Play 1-2, take away high-low reads, and you pairing him with Brian Flores in the defense, and that likes to give you different looks, that likes to mask and disguise things and rotate a lot post-snap. He loves to change the picture for quarterbacks and really frustrate quarterbacks, and Jamont McCoy giving them that kind of CB1 type of a caliber player on the outside. I didn't have Byron Murphy, who moves around in that secondary, plays outside, plays nickel. I think this makes a lot of sense for the Vikings to go get themselves a guy to play as that CB1 caliber guy for their defense.
And BP, I don't know if these draft experts agree with me, but I do think there's a pretty big drop off from corner 2 to corner 3.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's definitely a talented group, but you're talking about pedigree and provenness. Yeah, like the top 2 guys are proven. After that, like you got Avion Terrell, who's probably the next most proven guy. He's been starting since a freshman at Clemson. And then you're kind of like, where do we go from there? Like, who's the next guy to come up in the rankings?
Yeah, height, weight, speed, and the Minnesota Vikings found it and moved up for it in this mock draft. That brings us to pick number 16 in the New York Jets. John Butchko on the clock for the second time in this mock draft, going with Arizona State wide receiver Jordan Tyson. The Lions go into the trenches with Caden Proctor, the Alabama offensive tackle. Does that mean he plays right side? Penei Sewell moves over to the left side? Or does Caden Proctor stay on the left side? Or is Caden Proctor a guard in the NFL? I want to get your guys' opinion on that. Akeem Mesidor, edge rusher from University of Miami, goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after they moved down a few slots. So getting a little extra pick there and probably taking a guy that they might have already selected at pick number 15. Carolina Panthers drafting a tight end out of Oregon, the ridiculously athletic Kenyon Sadiq. And the Cleveland Browns coming up with their second selection. We heard from Spencer German talking about the needs there. They go offensive tackle, and now they get their wide receiver in Omar Cooper Jr. out of Indiana with the second selection they got from the Dallas Cowboys at pick number 20. Chicago Bears, Dylan Thieneman, safety from the University of Oregon, and the Los Angeles Chargers, TJ Parker, edge rusher from Clemson. But pick 21 is the third trade of this mock draft for the Chicago Bears, coming up to get their guy, yet another defensive back. So 3 trades, 2 of those 3 trades are teams coming up to get a safety. Now with the Chicago Bears drafting Dylan Thieneman at pick number 21, coming up from pick 25 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, before we get to all the trade madness here, I do want to go to the Carolina Panthers and Kenyon Sadiq with that selection, because Julian Council is standing by here with the pick and the reasoning behind Kenyon Sadiq to the Panthers at 19.
With the 19th pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, Carolina Panthers select Kenyon Sadiq, tight end out of Oregon. It makes all the sense for the Panthers go out and draft a tight end in the first round. After you look at the last 6 or so years since Greg Olsen departed Carolina, they've had the worst production from the tight end position since 2020, and that needs to end. Yes, they've invested in Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame in the 5th round last year, and Jatavion Sanders out of Texas in the 4th round a year prior to that, but they've never gone out there and really invested that much in acquiring a playmaker at tight end like they would be doing by taking a guy in Kenyon Sadiq. We've seen Tyler Warren, we've seen Colson Loveland, we've seen Brock Bowers over the last 2 seasons. First-round tight ends go out there and make a massive impact for their teams as rookies, and that's what Kenyon Sadiq potentially could be for Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers offense in 2026.
So, fellas, looking at the way this thing fell between pick 16 and pick 22, you had Tyson, Proctor, Mesidor, Sadiq, then Omar Cooper Jr., and then the trade up for Dylan Thieneman. Matt, Dylan Thieneman, I know he's a prospect that you like quite a bit, and the Bears could not sit back at 25 and really think that they were going to be able to get Dylan Thieneman. So they made the move up to pick number 21. They gave up pick number 60 to the Steelers. The Steelers moving back 4 spots from 21 to 25 and also collecting pick number 85 in the process. What do you think about this move for both the Bears and your Steelers moving back a little bit, Matt.
Yeah, and just to rewind real quick, I do very much agree with the Sadiq pick to the Panthers. I think it's a very Bryce Young friendly move, and that has to be a huge priority for them. I don't think the Bears gave up a ton. I would have liked my man Chris Carter to get a little more to move down, but I think Thieneman's one of the premier prospects. I'm not saying he's a blue chip guy, but I think he's a first rounder all day long, and it's a big need for the Bears. So I certainly approve from the Bears perspective. Maybe we'll get to the Steelers side of things whenever we release the pick here.
Yeah, we'll find out who the Steelers end up selecting after going down from pick number 21 to 25. And guys, to your point earlier about the safety stuff, Thieneman ends up going pick 21. So there was a safety on the board for the Cowboys, not only at 12, but at pick number 20, if they wanted to go that route. But is Thieneman the style of player that they're looking for in that sort of nickel role? We've seen Thieneman play a lot of different roles in college, but I tend to like him more as a deep safety and his ability to range from the middle of the field.
Absolutely. He's more suited for that free safety role. He's got the instincts, the sideline to sideline range. You go back to, what was it, 2 years ago at Purdue, I think he had 6 interceptions on it. Purdue had a lot of talent, man. Him, Nick Scourton, Deion Burks. They don't know what the Boilermakers are doing there, you know what I mean? But they've had a lot of talent.
Better boosters and more NIL money, I think.
That is a fact. So they've had a lot of talent. Dylan Thieneman, I told Keith on the pod when we did his breakdown, Caleb Downs is, a blue chip player in this class. But for me in safeties, I don't see a big drop off between the two players. You're going to get 2 impact players. It may come in a different package, but also what you look at with Dylan Thieneman is how Dan Lanning used him this year. He was used more as a 2-high rotational safety working down into the box. You think back to that Penn State game. He gets the game sealing interception, rotating down post snap, being able to disguise coverages. You get a lot of bang for your buck with a Dylan Thieneman. And I think that, again, the Cowboys, you could have just sat there at 20 and not trade up, but shout out to the Bears and understanding, hey, we lost Kevin Byard, we lost Jaquan Brisker. We need to get us a safety in this room.
Keith, what's your cluster buster on some of these positions? We saw 2 edge rushers and 2 wide receivers go in this group of picks between 16 and 22. How do you grade TJ Parker versus Akeem Mesidor? And how do you grade Jordan Tyson at wide receiver versus someone like Omar Cooper or Mekhi Lemon, who just went a few picks before?
Yeah, I mean, just to address the Akeem Mesidor versus the TJ Parker, right? I like Akeem Mesidor going where he went to the Tampa Bay Bucks. The Tampa Bay Bucks, they're very similar to the New Orleans Saints to me, right? Where they've swung at the edge rusher position and they've missed a couple times, right? And I think that they're finally trying to right their wrongs. Akeem Mesidor is one of those prospects I just put in the grown man bucket, right? He's going to come in there, you know exactly what you're going to get out of him, and maybe he'll consistently touch that double-digit sack mark. So I like him going there versus TJ Parker. We know his career, right? It's kind of been up and down, and that's been a lot of these prospects that we've seen come from Clemson, especially this year. So for him, I think it's great that he was able to, was it August? He was a first-round pick. I think if you would have asked in October, November, he was probably a 3rd or 4th round pick, and now he's back up there. I think it's about, can Harbaugh get the very best out of him, though? And that's going to be the thing. Just to address the wide receiver position, I am a little bit surprised to see Jordan Tyson fall as far as he did, and he's going to be wide receiver 3 off the board, because we had Cardinal Tate go top 10. We had Mekhi Lemon go to the Rams. I didn't think Jordan Tyson would come in as wide receiver 3. And I think that there's not that much separation between the 3. And I actually have Tyson as my wide receiver 1.
Matt, I got to ask you, how much does injuries impact this? Because I think Mesidor and Tyson both, you could argue, could go a lot earlier, but you could argue fall quite a bit, because a lot's going to hinge on those medical reports for teams. Yeah,
and BP, I'm not avoiding your question, but it's the hardest thing for any of us to answer. We didn't go to med school. We don't have, those reports. We just don't know exactly what's going on. But Mesidor scares the heck out of me, to be honest with you. I mean, a 6-year guy with a lot of injury history. But I also think that the fact that he felt that they went to Tampa is noteworthy, because I think their seat is really warm and they need instant production.
Yeah, not only did I not go to medical school, I barely went to class at the school I did go to. So I am definitely not qualified to speak on such things. Next, guys, we've got the rest of round one, picks number 23 through 32. And if your team did not have a first round pick, you will get a selection for your squad. Colts, Falcons, Packers, Jaguars, and Broncos. Those teams without first round picks. We're going to hear from those hosts making selections in round two as well. Coming up in the Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special. The NFL Mock Draft Special is brought to you by Rougiette. The NFL Draft is here, where preparation meets opportunity, and every decision matters. It's all about being ready when your moment comes. And that same mindset applies off the field too. That's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette offers treatments designed to help you feel ready and confident when it matters most. Their top option, Rougiette Ready, is a mint that dissolves under your tongue with clinically proven ingredients. It works quickly, often in about 15 minutes, and can last up to 36 hours. And they also offer Go Long, designed to help with both performance and control. It's all about showing up at your best whenever your moment is. Head to rougiette.com/lockedonnfl and get 15% off your ED treatment. That's Rougiette, RUGIET.com/lockedonnfl for 15% off. Rougiette Performance Medicine for Men. That brings us to pick number 23 in the Locked On NFL mock draft for 2026, and it is the Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to go to the offensive line, and they're going to draft the athletic but somewhat raw redshirt sophomore Caleb Lomu out of the University of Utah at pick number 23. The Browns up again. They're going safety, the third safety of the first round of this mock draft, Toledo's Emmanuel McNeil Warren. Pittsburgh now on the clock after trading down a few spots, selecting KC Concepcion, the speedy wide receiver from Texas A&M at 25. The Buffalo Bills at pick 26, selecting a nose tackle, a defensive lineman for their new 3-4 defense out of Georgia, Christian Miller. The San Francisco 49ers, I had a hand in this, myself and co-host Eric Crocker of Locked On 49ers going offensive tackle and swinging for the fences with Max Ihonachor out of Arizona State here. Anthony Hill, linebacker from Texas to the Houston Texans at pick number 28, keeping a strength there for the Houston Texans. And we'll stop right there before the Kansas City Chiefs pick at number 29. I want to go back, Matt, because you said you wanted to speak on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I know you're a fan of KC Concepcion. So getting a pick, moving down a few spots, still getting a playmaking wide receiver for the Steelers at pick number 25. You got to be all over that.
For the most part, yes. Concepcion is my crush for the Steelers at the wide receiver position, and they really only have two on the roster and need quite a bit. But my real crush is the guy you took, Mad Max out of Arizona State. I would have sprinted to the podium even at 21 to take Max, let alone at 25.
I agree with it, Matt. And this is a compliment to you, BP, right? You and Croc with that selection. Mad Max is one of my favorite offensive tackles in this draft class, right? And I had to just put a big board up. Like, he probably ranked closer to 20 than 30 for me. I think this young man, the ceiling is through the roof. The athleticism, the toughness, everything we witnessed at the Senior Bowl, I think it's all there for him. So I think this is a home run pick for the 49ers getting where they got him.
I think some folks might be a little surprised to see Caleb Lomu not only go as high as he does here, but go to the Philadelphia Eagles. So let's hear from Louis DiBiase on why Caleb Lomu was the selection for the Eagles at number 23.
With the 23rd overall pick in the 2026 Locked On NFL mock draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select Utah offensive tackle Caleb Lomu. The Philadelphia Eagles' number one priority in this draft is to find the heir apparent to Lane Johnson long-term at right tackle. I think Caleb Lomu could be that player. I thought he could go inside the top 10, inside the top 15, but Francis Maui-Joa went ahead of him. Monroe Freeling, Caden Proctor, Spencer Fano, his Utah teammate. There was a run on other offensive line prospects that allowed a player that's 6'6", over 33-inch arms, tested very well at the combine, did not allow a single sack to his quarterback in 2025. This somehow fell right into Howie Roseman's lap, and I think Lomu doesn't have to start right away at right tackle. Lane Johnson can be the starter for 2026, maybe 2027. Lomu can develop his play strength, which needs to increase, but the pass protection reps are there, and I think this is an absolute steal.
What do you think, guys? A steal at 23 for Caleb Lomu. And similar to the conversation we just had, Keith, a minute ago about edge rushers and wide receivers, I think it's times two with all of these offensive linemen. Some guys played on the right side in college. Some guys played on the left side in college, which I think helps Caleb Lomu. But now we're talking about maybe going back and moving him over to the right side and replacing Lane Johnson, who was a physical marvel and such a good player for the Eagles for a long time. I like the idea of getting in front of that position for both the 49ers and the Eagles here and drafting a tackle, because it can take some time to develop those guys. But Damian, Caleb Lomu, how does he rank with all these offensive tackles in this class? And how do you break up that cluster of tackles?
Yeah, he's he's one of the few left tackles that has it's only him and Monroe Freeling that has first round buzz right now and first round hype, I would say, in a game that could land in the first round. I think this guy's got athleticism. Just like I said, he's kind of raw, got to develop him. If it was still Stoutland University in Philly, I would feel really, really good about this. Yeah. A draft stash, let Lane Johnson do his thing and let him just kind of develop there. I don't know who the O-line coach is going to be or who he is for Philly heading into this season, but you got to hope that, okay, we're drafting him. At the end of the day, you're a Philadelphia Eagles team that did not fare well in the playoffs this past season. The season did not go well for you offensively. You got to figure some things out overall, and drafting an offensive tackle, which I'd love getting ahead of it, but not drafting a ready impact player for year one is going to be a hard pill to swallow for the fan base, knowing that they're trying to get back to the playoffs, get back to the Super Bowl, and prove that wasn't just a 1 or 2 time thing for them.
BP, real quick on this. I don't think it's a bad pick. I mean, tackles don't grow on trees, and we all understand that. But unlike Fano or Max or Proctor even or Malagoa, I don't think he could come in and play guard for you for a year. I think he's only a tackle, and therefore he's sitting around for at least a season.
I believe that this was when I was at the combine. I believe this was said that he wanted to hover around 295 to 305, and I'm like, if you're playing that, there's no way we're reducing you down in the guard to battle with the big bullies on the interior defensive line. So to Matt's point, you're drafting a guy to just let him sit on the bench and learn for a legit true year while your starting tackles play for the full season.
Yeah, and that was part of our reasoning with the Max Ahanichor pick for the 49ers, because, rather than just sit for a year behind Trent Williams, and not a bad guy to sit behind and learn, right. You got to flip your footwork if you're thinking this guy's going to play on the left side, and much easier potentially, and maybe I'm underrating how hard it is to play guard in the NFL, but Max Ahanichor's got these tree trunks for thighs, this athleticism. Wouldn't that be a nice runway for a player to play next to Trent Williams and compete at left guard before eventually picking outside to tackle? I'd probably rather have a guy flip sides and play guard his first year in the NFL than stay at right tackle even and play on an island out there as a rookie.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Moving on in the rest of the first round of this mock draft for 2026, the Kansas City Chiefs select Malachi Lawrence, the edge rusher, who's got some helium coming into this thing out of UCF. Miami Dolphins, their second selection, again going big, again going to the trenches. Love this one. Keldrick Falk, defensive lineman out of the University of Auburn, falling to pick number 30 to the Dolphins. New England Patriots selecting an edge rusher, Texas A&M's Cassius Howell, and the Seattle Seahawks rounding out round one with cornerback Chris Johnson from San Diego State. Let's hear from Kansas City Chiefs, Locked On Chiefs host Ryan Tracy about the pick at number 29.
With the number 29 pick of the 2026 Locked On Network mock draft, the Kansas City Chiefs select edge Malachi Lawrence from UCF. This was a typical pick for the Kansas City Chiefs, who are very used to picking here at 29 to 32 range, something they have a lot of experience in. And it's a very similar situation to a few years ago when they arrived at their pick and were unable to find a first-round grade still left on their board. They were unable to trade out, as was the same situation here. And much like with Felix Enrique-Ozama from K-State a few years ago, the Chiefs were left to make a decision about the highest possible second-round grade that they had that they could put on this roster and try to get after the quarterback. They decided to do that. With what you see from Lawrence as a guy that's a little bit thin for Steve Spagnuolo's type, but he has the length, he has the explosivity and the juice to come after the quarterback the way that this team needs to.
Little humble brag there. We're used to picking in the third.
I was going
to. You're 32 this year, and you didn't even earn.
It wasn't even your pick.
Yeah, I was going to jump straight to that, man. I feel like they had to let us know that they're usually picked between picks 29 and 32, right?
Yeah, not this year.
And how's Clyde Edwards-Helaire working out for you? And all these guys are making that portion of the first round. You do hope that Malachi Lawrence turns out better than some of those late first round picks. And it's at a certain point, you got to take a swing on the athleticism that he brings. Yeah. Malachi Lawrence is 6'4", 253 pounds, ran 4.52 with a scorching 1.57 10-yard split, 40-inch vertical. He's got these long arms and big hands, and he knows how to use them. A little bit raw, kind of rushes chest to chest a little bit too much, but he can disengage because of those arms and his hand usage. So really interesting prospect that at this point I would kind of expect to get into round one. Guys, where are you at on Malachi Lawrence?
I like it. I like the pick. I like the change up, right? Like they're accustomed to drafting like the Ashton Gelati from Louisville, George Karlaftis, these more densely sawed off type of builds, and getting a guy that brings that explosiveness, that juice off the edge, it gives you a different pitch in terms of your pass rush on third downs. And they need that, honestly. Like just trying to, because you think about adding another guy that looks just like that, you can't get to the quarterback quickly that way. And I think with Steve Spagnuolo and his ability to dial up pressure packages and coverages in the back end to make the quarterback hold the ball, having a guy like Malachi Lawrence just in your back pocket, whether he comes in as a DPR while you work on, like you said, some of the technique and even the run defense, right? Like working on him, like setting hard edges and things like that. That's stuff that you could coach up and get him to where he needs to be. But that pass rush ability, they need that juice off the edge. So I like that pick.
Looking at some of the selections here at the end of round one, I like Kendrick Falk at 30, and you feel a lot better at for a guy that doesn't have the greatest pass rush win rate at the end of round one versus potentially in the middle of round one where he's being projected a lot out of Auburn. But we kind of glossed over the Anthony Hill selection to the Texans at 28. Keith, what's the scouting report on Anthony Hill? He's not a popular name in the first round of mock drafts.
Yeah, I thought this pick was interesting, to say the least. One, because I think this is a fairly good linebacker class, right? But then also, when I look at the Houston Texans, one of their biggest positional needs for me is the interior defensive line position. Linebacker, I thought that they were pretty solid at linebacker, but Anthony Hill's scouting report, he's another versatile defender, right? This is a guy that can play stack backer. You can walk him up on the line of scrimmage. I have more of a middle to late second round grade on Anthony Hill versus taking him in the bottom part of the first round. But listen, with all this talent, right, you have Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter and all these guys on the back end, the Derek Stingleys and the Petries of the world. He's going to find a role. I guess I would have liked to see the Houston Texans attack more of the interior defensive line position, or like we talked about, just go ahead and swing for the fences with a high-end athlete.
And real quick, BP, Anthony Hill Jr. coming into the season was Arvell Reese before Arvell Reese. He was the athletic linebacker who would line up on the edge for Texas, and you saw some of that pass rush capability. Now, this year, Texas didn't rush him, I think, nearly as much as they did in 2024, but you see that ability to drop off into coverage, to handle. I think there was some reps against him versus Eli Stowers, the super athletic tight end out of Vanderbilt, him covering him at the second level, downfield, deep over routes, things like that. He can turn and run with guys, protect the seam by also blitzing, and I think there's still pass rush ability in his game. So that, I think, with D'Amico Ryans, you get another versatile piece in this defensive front. Hey, we just tip our caps to him and let him do his thing. But like he said, I would have loved to see the Kanan McDonald, the Lee Hunter, just that big nose tackle, because they're missing that right now on this roster.
And I think Croc and I stole their guy in Max Ahonishore right before they selected him.
Probably.
So apologies there. Made him scramble there. But yeah, you're not going to get a clean first round grade at the end of the first round. So you got to, do you go interior offensive line? Do you go off ball backer? And that's the decision that a lot of these teams are making right here at the end of round one. The scouts are really raving about Chris Johnson, the cornerback out of San Diego State to the Seattle Seahawks. I like that pick. And I love the idea of Cassius Howell flying off the edge for Mike Vrabel's defense in New England. Guys, let's talk about those teams that did not have first round selections. At pick number 47, the Indianapolis Colts go linebacker themselves, going with Texas Tech's Jacob Rodriguez. The Atlanta Falcons taking Caleb Banks, defensive lineman out of the University of Florida, in round 2. The Green Bay Packers at pick 52, selecting a big defensive tackle in Iowa State's Dominique Orange, Big Citrus, phenomenal nickname. Jacksonville Jaguars. Here's one that you don't see going this high is Oscar Delp, the tight end out of the University of Georgia, even though he's got a ton of athletic ability. And then the Denver Broncos finishing this thing off, pick number 62, Jadarian Price, running back out of the University of Notre Dame. Before I get your thoughts, guys, I want to go to Tony Wiggins, the host of Locked On Jaguars, with the Delp pick all the way up at pick number 56.
With the 56th pick in the NFL draft, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars taking University of Georgia tight end Oscar Delp. Look, you can't be choosy when you're picking at 56, right? It's a late second round pick for a reason. The team had a lot of success. They did not have a first round pick due to the Travis Hunter trade last year. Delp gives them a high upside player that this system has done really, really well with tight ends. So the system that I'm talking about is the one that Grant Udinski and Liam Cohen both share. It comes from the Sean McVay tree. What they're getting is a dude that ran a 4.42 at 6'5", 245 pounds. That's pretty dang on good. They usually go for things where guys have individual traits. They call them superpowers or things that make them intangibly rich. They go for that with James Gladstone. And I think what he gives them is a plus athlete as a second tight end eventually to go along with Brenton Strange and open things up for Trevor Lawrence in the passing game.
Oscar Delp, intangibly rich. That is a phenomenal couple of words back to back there. I like that quite a bit. And a good athlete and maybe held back by his Georgia offense, guys.
Yes.
No, I don't say without a doubt, and DP knows because we do the show all the time. I've been talking about Oscar Delp for probably 2 years now. And I've been frustrated for probably about 2 years now because I see a guy that makes a play once every 3 games. But when I look at him, I seen a 6'5", 245-pound frame. Did I project that he was going to run a 4.4? No, but I said this guy's a sub 4.5 tight end, right? And I was like, man, this guy is really talented. And that's why he's been somebody we've consistently talked about. Him going this high, I think I like it. I like him because I think it's aggressive. Obviously, with the Jaguars, they're talking about Travis Hunter playing full-time corner now. So you're essentially losing a weapon. You have to figure out what's going to happen with Brian Thomas. And let's be completely honest. Like to this point, Trevor Lawrence has shown us that he's a good quarterback, not necessarily one of the NFL greats. And I think with good quarterbacks, you just have to make sure that you consistently surround them with the pieces. And I think Oscar Delp, NFL career could be much better than his collegiate career.
Absolutely. Matt, what stands out to you at the end of this mock draft, whether it's late round 1 or some of these round 2 selections?
I have no problem with Denver going back to the well to get one more playmaker. I know the Waddle trade was huge, and I just thought the playmakers had to be at the top of their list as the offseason went along. And Caleb Banks to me is fascinating. I don't know that Atlanta's the place that's going to get the most out of him. History shows the answer to that is no. But, man, if any of these D tackles hits and it's him, he's going to be the best one in the class by far, in my opinion.
Yeah,
that's I said BP. That's definitely an interesting landing spot because I think the thing we Keith talked about, I think on the pod a couple of times, the big issue with him is similar to Deion Walker. It's being 6'6", almost 6'7". It's the pad level. It gets to run and getting pushed off the ball, but the pass rush upside is immense for Caleb Banks. If he's healthy, I know he had a foot injury so far during the process. So once he's healthy, he's like, man, we got a guy that can collapse the pocket, get in the face of Bryce Young, get in the face of Baker Mayfield, try to pressure and get in the face of a Tyler Shuck. But definitely an interesting fit. I go back to Denver this would be back-to-back second-round picks that they've spent on running backs. They drafted R.J. Harvey last year. I think they brought back J.K. Dobbins, who we know, unfortunately, at some point during the season, we're not going to see him again because of the injuries. They always bite him and everything. He's snake-bitten in that regard. But I really like Jadarian Price. I think this is a guy that has the upside to be an RB1 for a team. You look at it, you see the explosiveness and the vision from a punt and from a kick return standpoint. He outstanding kick returner. And the times that he did get on the field, he's patient, he's durable, he runs behind his pads, and he knows how to find daylight. And I love that about his game. And he's an underrated receiver out of the backfield. Sean Payton would absolutely love utilizing this young man.
And that's it. That is the 2026 Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special. See you guys next year. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks to all the hosts who get involved with this, which is always a lot of fun every season. Love seeing all the trades. Let us know how you think your favorite teams did. And, of course, tune into your favorite teams. Locked On podcast, no matter the sport. And, of course, you can find Matt and I daily doing the NFL Six-Pack and Damian and Keith on Locked On NFL Draft. We will see you in 2027.